Let's get right into it. Today, we're breaking down a really fascinating structural framework that comes straight from a highly successful entrepreneur. We're going to look at the exact strategies this self-described working-class kid used to build immense wealth from absolutely nothing. Now, what I love about the source we're analyzing in this explainer is that he aggressively avoids that generic, fluffy financial advice. You know the kind. Instead, we're looking at calculated, structural steps drawn right from his actual life, from working a miserable job as a carpenter's apprentice to building a multi-stream empire. If you want to bypass the noise and see the actual mechanics of building wealth, you're exactly where you need to be.
So the whole foundation of our source's journey actually starts with a pretty massive moment of friction. Imagine you're a young student and you're asked to write down your dream job, your dream car, and your dream house. He confidently writes down business owner, Ferrari, and mansion. His teacher's response? It was swift and honestly completely dream-crushing. They told him life is going to be tough. So be realistic and lower your expectations. But rather than just accepting that unsolicited limitation, he used it as fuel. He realized super early on that if you let the traditional system dictate your ambitions, you are never going to break out of the herd. You absolutely have to protect your ambitions from people who haven't achieved what you want to achieve.
All right, so here is the four-part blueprint we're covering in this explainer. 1. Defying realistic expectations. 2. Embracing calculated career risks. 3. The urgency of investing early. And 4. Diversifying to protect your wealth. Let's dive right in.
First up, Section 1, Defying Realistic Expectations. Look, to defy average expectations, you've got to aggressively filter the advice you take. Your parents, your friends, your teachers, they probably have genuinely good intentions. But if they haven't actually built a large sum of wealth themselves, why on earth would you take their financial advice? You have to guard your mindset against the average expectations of the crowd. And practically speaking, when you're tackling an obstacle that everyone else thinks is impossible, it really just comes down to a simple, iterative process. Most people hit a roadblock, assume it means they aren't good enough, and they just give up. Our source counters this by immediately brainstorming at least 10 different solutions. You just pick the best one, and hey, if it fails, you don't quit. You literally just move to solution number 2. You keep iterating through these until one breaks you out. It completely takes the emotion out of failure and turns it into a mechanical game of elimination. Moving right along to Section 2, Embracing Calculated Career Risks.
Our source actually learned the danger of staying in your comfort zone as a 20-year-old carpenter's apprentice. He loved the trade itself, but his manager relentlessly bullied him, handing off all the rubbish jobs. One night, sitting alone in his apartment, he had this realization. He had no dependents, no mortgage, and ultimately absolutely nothing to lose. He quit the very next day. He realized the biggest risk of his entire life would have been staying comfortably paralyzed under a bullying manager. Traditional advice always tells you to stay loyal to one company, right? But the studies referenced by our source show you're actually way more likely to build wealth faster by taking calculated risks. Things like upgrading your job every couple of years, starting a side hustle, or launching a business. Blind loyalty to a single company that caps your earning potential is a massive, uncalculated risk to your future. If you do choose to be an employee, the source argues you've got to find a role that pays you based on the results you deliver, not just the hours you sit warming a chair.
All right, on to Section 3, the urgency of investing early.
The second you start generating an income, you must immediately put that money to work. It is all about capturing compounding returns as early as humanly possible, instead of waiting around until you feel established. And to prove you definitely don't need decades of experience to start, the source shares this wild anecdote. After opening his own business, he was just too swamped to think about investing. Then, he takes on this 14-year-old kid for 2 weeks of work experience. Out of nowhere, this kid confidently tips him off to a specific stock he'd been researching. The source took a leap of faith alongside him, and 2 weeks later, that stock practically went to the moon, functionally 10xing overnight. That 14-year-old netted 10 grand in a virtual paper trading account, and the source made a massive real-world profit. The takeaway? Age and experience just aren't barriers to entry in the modern market. And honestly, this perfectly illustrates why you cannot wait on the sidelines. The source points to some data from Fidelity that is frankly terrifying if you're the kind of person who tries to perfectly time the market. Check this out. Over a 4-decade period, if you miss just the 5 best trading days, you reduce your long-term gains by 38%. But it gets worse. If you miss the 10 best days, you literally destroy 55% of your potential long-term wealth. Half your wealth gone, just for missing 10 days out of 40 years. You simply have to build the habit of keeping your money invested for the long haul.
Now, when you're actually ready to execute on this, the source highlights 3 mandatory features you need in an investment platform. First, smooth chart features, because clunky apps will just frustrate you and cause mistakes. Second, a wide range of stocks and ETFs so you can actually diversify properly. And third, and this is huge for beginners, paper trading functionality. The source heavily emphasizes using paper trading to practice with virtual money first, but there's a big catch here. You have to treat it exactly like your real portfolio. If you don't take it seriously, and you just YOLO virtual money on ridiculous bets because there's no real consequence, your strategies are going to completely fall apart when your actual life savings are on the line. Finally, we hit section 4. Diversifying to protect your wealth.
Listen, all the hustle, all the early investing, and all that calculated risk-taking, it is completely useless if you end up losing your fortune to catastrophic, uncalculated risks down the line. To drive this point home, the source shares a chilling story about the absolute trap of leverage. He was friends with this millionaire, a guy on the top 50 UK rich list, who used to throw these massive fireworks parties at a sprawling mansion. When asked how he made so much money, the friend admitted it wasn't his businesses. He was leveraging his investments, basically borrowing money to artificially multiply his potential gains. But leverage swings both ways. He was chasing 40 to 50% annual returns in a private group, which sounded way too good to be true, so the source trusted his gut and stayed far away. Well, just months later, that entire private group went under. Because the friend was so heavily leveraged, he owed considerably more than he actually had. He lost the mansion, went completely bankrupt, and lost absolutely everything.
So the absolutely crucial point here is you have to spread your risk so a single failure doesn't ruin you. In the stock market, the source handles this using the incredibly straightforward, highly effective 3-fund portfolio. It's exactly what it sounds like. A total U.S. stock market index fund, a total international stock index fund, and a total bond market fund. This simple 3-step structure gives you massive diversification across different global markets and asset classes. It minimizes your risk while still capturing all that long-term growth.
But remember, true defense goes way beyond just your stock portfolio. Real structural diversification means building multiple, disconnected streams of income across completely different asset classes. For example, our source has physical shops and a distribution company in the traditional business sector. He's earning affiliate and advertising revenue in the digital space. On top of that, he's collecting stock dividends from investments and rental income from real estate. By spreading his empire across all these varied columns, he virtually guarantees that one wrong decision or one random industry downturn literally cannot wipe him out. So, the blueprint for building wealth from zero is right in front of you. We've laid it all out in this explainer: how to defy limiting advice, take the right career risks, urgently leverage compounding interest, and bulletproof your assets through deep diversification. But having the information is only step 1. The final choice remains entirely yours. Will you just accept the realistic limitations imposed by society and join the crowd? Or will you take calculated, relentless action to break the cycle and build your own wealth? Think critically about your next move. Thanks for hanging out with us and keep learning.